What's going on, guys? So tonight I want to touch on some epic cards in this game, and specifically I want to compare them to certain legendary cards. So what I mean is, I think there are several instances in this game where we have like limited epic cards that are a lot better than several limited legendary cards. So I want to point this out because a lot of people like to think that if a card's rarity is higher, that automatically means the card is better than a lower rarity card, which this isn't the case, guys. I just want you to wrap your heads around this idea that a card can have a lower rarity and still be a lot better than cards with higher rarities. That doesn't necessarily mean that that card is good just because it's a limited legendary card. And I want to point this out in several examples here. I don't really want to call this like a top 10 list, but I am going to use 10 different limited epic cards that I feel that are better than several limited legendary cards, just to give you guys an idea of kind of what I mean here. So we're going to start off with the most obvious, I think. Just kind of going to show cards and we're going to discuss, but I want to show the first limited epic, probably one of the best ones in the game, to be honest with you guys, and it's Art Deco. When played, this card gains plus 20 perm, so it's going to constantly get bigger as the game goes on. You're getting that permanent power, which is fantastic. And you're going to gain plus 1 energy perm, and that's super important in this game because obviously you need energy to cast cards, right? So anytime you can get permanent energy gain, it's super good. Now, this card gives you it just by playing the card, so it's not taking up a slot, and I'm saying that for a certain reason here, because the card I'm going to compare it to. But this card, you play it, you get what you get the immediate effect, right, and you move on. It's not clogging up your hand, per se. So I want to compare it to a different card here. We have, let's see here. This is a limited legendary card. It is Artificial Heart. So this card now, when compared to Art Deco, this is a limited legendary card, right? So in theory, should be better, but it's not. This card says when drawn, you're going to gain that plus 1 energy until played. So you're going to get that effect, right? The same effect that you're getting from Art Deco, essentially, but Art Deco gave you permanent power on top of it. Granted, it does cost more. Art Deco is a higher energy cost, but well worth it because you're getting your money back on the power as well, not just the added effect. And this card is gumming up your hand because now if you play this card, you are no longer getting that extra energy, so it's a temporary effect or artificial effect. You guys saw what I did there. But yeah, so there's a perfect example of a epic card that is definitely way better than a limited legendary card. So let's move on to the next example I have for you guys. This is kind of what this video is going to do. I'm just going to compare certain cards. You guys can see these are specific epics that I've notated that I think are definitely deserving of a higher rarity. If not, knocking some of these other, or some of these limited legendaries should not be the category they are at. So it's kind of what I'm doing with this video, just to do something a little bit different for you guys tonight. I know we've been doing a lot of the same old. So here's a good card right here. This card dropped pretty recently, Shakespeares Folio. This card's made a pretty big splash in the meta. I think this card's really underplayed right now. People that do play it know this card's really good. But when played, 2 of each of your random Weird World, Documented, and Battle cards, wherever they are, gain plus 25 perm. Now, there's some specific Weird World cards that are really good. You've got, like, Rat King comes to mind offhand, Roanoke Colony. So there's definitely some good Weird World cards. Documented, you've got Magna Carta is a fantastic card, which would actually make this card even cheaper. And you've got some good battle cards as well. Blanking, I know we've got Night Attacks, the first one coming to mind. I can't think of another one offhand, but I know there's some other good ones. I think it's Siege of Baghdad, I'm thinking. I think that's a battle card. But yes, anyway, this card's going to give 6 cards plus 25 perm. So you play this card first turn of the game, it's going to trigger 3 times. That is a ton of permanent power you're getting this game. So let's compare it now. So this card has stipulations. You're going to need certain cards in your deck at certain times, right? You're going to need Weird World, you're going to need Document, you're going to need some battle cards. So it does have, okay, I need these specific cards. So I'm going to compare it to another card that kind of similar, kind of specific. Let's check it out. It's also a limited legendary. Like I said, we're comparing to limited legendaries. Cerberus says if your deck has 3 or more dog cards, your ancient Greece cards in hand gain plus 18 perm. So this effect is in your hand. So now I have to have ancient Greece cards in the deck, which number one, ancient Greece cards aren't great. So now I'm hindering my deck already just having ancient Greece cards in them. And it's only like I have to be in my hand. So if I go to play this card and they ain't even in my hand, it's not even doing anything. So now I have to have dogs in my deck. I have to have ancient Greece cards, and hopefully I got at least 4 in my hand when I play this to give them, 18 perm power. So right there, I'm showing you that only 4 cards max are going to get buffed because you have to play this card to trigger it. So 4 cards potentially getting 18 perm, whereas Shakespeare's first folio was wherever they are in your deck, they're automatic. So 6 cards are automatically going to get that. 25 perm? So huge difference, right? So to me, this is crazy. This card should not be in the hand to be a limited legendary card. This card is definitely not a limited legendary card in my opinion. So, but there's a perfect comparison there as to why. That's I'm sure people have used this card to its finest and done okay, but definitely a bad card. All right, next up, let's hit another limited epic card here. We've got another newer card that came out, Ballet. This card's kind of neat, guys. I like the flexibility it gives you, which is a plus, I think, in my opinion. I think they need to do more with this left, middle, right slot thing. I really like this kind of mechanic they've brought out. I mean, not really a mechanic, but just making you think about where you're playing, because it can kind of screw up your cycling occasionally, or it could help, depending on how you're playing the game. But just being able to, in a pinch, I need to play this in the middle, and I want to make it bigger. And, now I want to buff history cards plus 22 for 2 turns, depending on how your hand draws. Could be good, could be not as good. So just the flexibility on this card, I think, makes this really good. And I think if good sports cards end up getting a little more support in the future, I think this card will be a snap auto include in all sports decks, because getting plus 24 until played is a real big stat for any deck, really. So I think this card is slept on a little bit. I have been seeing it a little more occasionally, but just the potential to give itself plus 40 perm and history cards plus 22, and you can even buff sports cards in a pinch. I mean, it's tough to beat. So let's see. Let's compare it to another card that does this left-right deal here. We've got Ace of Swords. I don't own this card, and there's a reason. So 7 energy costed card. You're only going to get 20 power right off the gate. That's already terrible. When played, if played in the left slot, your cards in hand gain plus 25 until played. Well, the other card gave the cards higher, or no, I think it was less. It was 24, but they were wherever they were. So this is only targeting your hand. So that's kind of bad. And then if played in the right slot, your opponent's cards in hand lose 25 until played. So not really doing a whole lot. So if you buffed history with Ballet, you can at least potentially get, 5, not counting itself, you would get, what was that, 5 cards could buff for 22. So that's pretty good. This card's only going to buff max 5 cards for 25. So and it's costing 7. I don't see it, guys. I think this card is a dud. So, I don't know. Just a thought. I think Ballet is probably better than this card. And you can go middle with Ballet. This card doesn't have a middle slot either. So, a little weak in my opinion for the 7 energy cost. All right, let's jump over to another card I think is really good. A lot you can do with it. Talos. Haven't been seeing too many Talos decks, and I'm surprised because I think this card's pretty decent. Yes, it does require 9 ocean cards, which could be the downside because ocean's probably not the greatest. You do have the cephalopod package, though, which is pretty strong. And we've been seeing sharks making kind of a comeback recently. So you do have a sharks package you could run with Talos as well. So there's some options, definitely some options with him. But your non-ocean cards are going to gain plus 20 until played. So there's a lot you can do there with basically another 9 cards that are going to get this 20 buff until played, which is pretty strong. So that's another 180 power you're going to distribute through your deck. So definitely slept on, I think, a little bit again. Like I said, I haven't been seeing this card running around very much. Let's check out what I'm going to compare it to now. So we have, this is 9 or more oceans cards. I'm going to compare it to Roswell Incident. So if played between 2 espionage cards, your space cards, wherever they are, gain plus 16 until played. So this is a 9-costed card, so that's expensive, number one. You have to have at least now you have to have at least 2 other espionage cards in your deck, which is fine. You can have some espionage. They got the buff recently with some of their, I think, 5 Eyes cards really help that package out. So let's say you do have that. But the cost, the 9 cost on this card, and then having to play a card on each side can be pretty tough because of the cost of this card. And I've played it a few times trying to make this card work. And for the headache you get, or for the headache of trying to do that, and then now having to basically hold this card in your hand, hopefully get those 2 espionage cards you need. Hopefully they're cheap enough to cast on both sides and play Roswell at the same time, and you're only getting plus 16 until played for doing it. Talos gets you plus 20, and you don't have to fiddle with all that. You can just make sure you got your 9 oceans cards, and you're good to go. Those other cards are getting that buff, so I don't know. I think this card's tough to make work. I don't know if you guys have tried it yet, but I've been wanting it because I like aliens. You know, I'm a big alien believer, and I just think this is a cool card. But man, I just can't seem to make it happen like I want it to. But all right, that's enough of that one. Let's move on to the next card I really like. So these are all epics I like, and I like to play too, guys. So keep that in mind. I don't think these are bad cards by any means. I think these epic cards are some of the better ones. If you guys don't have them, get them. Gray Goo. I love this card. You guys probably seen me make so many Goo decks now. I just really like this card. It just kind of toys with my imagination for some reason. But Gray Goo. So when drawn, if your deck has 9 or more science cards, so you need at least 9 science cards, 9 of your random science cards, wherever they are, lose 10 until played. And then 9 of your random non-science cards gain plus 10 perm. So, yes, it does have the downside of minus 10 until played on your science cards, but those other 9 cards are getting permanent power back. So once you play those 9 and you're back to normal, those other 9 cards now, you've got that 10 perm power still there. So you're gaining 90 perm power, which is going to you're going to do it at least twice. So that's 180 perm power. So late game, this card's really going to shine late game as you get to that 5th round. And you're probably not going to have the effect of the minus 10 until played any longer on those cards. And then that permanent power starts shining through. So I like the effect here that it gives you. Like I said, you are sacrificing a little bit, but it's hitting 9 cards, and it's wherever they are. They don't have to be in the hand. So I think that's fantastic. So let's compare. It only costs 5 too, and it still has decent base stats. 5 for 50 is really where you want to be at, right? You're getting anytime you can get 10 power for 1 energy. That's what you want. So let's check this out. So I'm going to compare it to Great Wall of China. So Great Wall of China, when drawn, your cards in hand gain 8 perm. So you're only getting 40, right? You got 5 cards when you draw in hand. It's only hitting cards in hand. And it itself it's a 3 energy card, but with 0 base power. So it's buffing itself, number one. So really, this card kind of sucks, right? It's not a card you typically want to play because it's taken up now one of the slots that you're playing a card in. right? Either that or you just draw it one time and it's a dead card the rest of the game. But why would you want to do that? That's weird. So you're going to play this card, and when you play it, it's not going to feel great because it has almost no power attached to it, right? And so basically you're buffing 4 other cards if you don't count itself for 8, because it's pretty much a worthless card when you play it. So what is that really doing for you? Not a whole lot. I think this card needs to be fixed to give it at least 30 base power. Really probably needs like 50 base power to make it halfway playable. If it had 40 base power, I'd probably play it, at least in low energy weeks. But really, I think it needs 50 to be halfway decent in this meta right now where we're at. So 3 energy, 50 power, and when drawn, gives your cards in hand 80 perm. Or 8 perm. 80 perm, that'd be busted. But yeah, 8 perm. I think that would make this card legendary. But the way it stands now, starting at 0 and only getting 8, when you play this card the first 2 times, it feels terrible. Card has no power to it. But Grey Goo, we saw, had 50 starting power. So it doesn't feel that terrible when you play Grey Goo. And you know on the back end, it's helping you. So, I don't know. That's my comparison there. Next up, we're going to do Roanoke Colony. Another sleeper card. It kind of snuck in there, kind of under the radar when it came out. I feel like a lot of people didn't really notice this card at first, but then I started seeing more and more people playing it as they realized the real potential of this card. So 5 energy, you're only 20 power, which is fine. I don't think it's under where you want to be, obviously, but at least it gave something. But it's really all about the ability here. When returned, if you lost the turn, your opponent's cards, wherever they are, lose 10 until played. So that's 180 they would lose. But if you win the turn, you gain 180 until played. So either way, you're winning. So it doesn't even matter if you lost with the turn or if you win with the turn. Really, this card's going to do fantastic either way, right? So that's what makes this card a superstar, because really it's smacking 200 power when you think about it either way for 5 energy. It's not doing 20. That 20 plus the 180 differential down there, whether you win or lose, is what you're looking at. So really 5 energy for 200 power is the way I look at this card. So fantastic. Let's compare it now to another similar type card here. Let's look at Electric Eel. Electric Eel, limited legendary card, which means supposed to be good, right? So we got 6 energy. You're getting 62 power. That's good. I mean, I'll take that any day. When returned, this is so another stipulation of winning, right? If you won the turn, your opponent loses 30 next turn. Okay, so they lose 30. That's cool. And your opponent's remaining cards in hand lose 30 next turn. Okay, well, chances are they played 3 cards, so I'm really only going to ding them 90 on the next turn. So you're saying I could pay 6 energy, ding them 90, or I could pay 5 energy and ding them 180 if I lose. And this stipulation doesn't even say, I have to win the turn. So if I lose the turn, what happens? I get nothing. So the ability is completely useless if I lose. And it's on the return. So I just don't see it, guys. This card's not a limited legendary card in my opinion. If it's a stipulation where I have to win and play this card, then, I mean, what happens when I lose? I'm just, no, ain't happening. All right, let's look at what the next one is. Another card I don't see enough of, REM Sleep. Man, I've been high on this card lately for some reason. I just really like it. When drawn, if you have played the moon this game, yeah, that's the downside, is you have to have the moon in your deck. If you've played the moon this game, your cards in hand gain plus 22 and cost plus 1 energy perm. It's 22 permanent power for 5 cards in hand, but they are going to cost 1 energy extra, which is a downside. It has to be somewhat of a higher energy week a lot of times to play this card, unless you have some big discount cards like Magna Carta or something in your hand. But still, that's a lot of power you're getting for free, basically. And that's just on the draw. You don't even have to play it right out the gate. Like, whew, I like it. Now, this other card I'm going to compare it to. I actually do like this card too. I don't think it's a bad card, but I just want to make the comparison here because this is a limited legendary card, and this requires me now to play it next to the moon. So the other one, I just draw it. I just draw it and automatically get the bonus. All I had to do was previously play the moon at any point in the game. So let's say I drew the moon right out the rip, and then turn 2 played REM sleep. Bam, I'm already off to the races. This card now, sometimes you'll draw it early. You don't have the moon yet, so now it's gumming up a spot in your hand because you don't want to play it. You got to get the moon next to it. Start cycling it properly. And then when you do it, those cards in hand are only getting plus 14 perm. Granted, they don't have the downside of costing more, which is nice, but it's only 14 perm, whereas REM sleep gave you 22 with the little bit of a downside. So, I mean, comparable, yes. I think... I don't know, especially high energy weeks, man. I really think REM sleep's a little stronger, even though with the downside effect. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I think that one's pretty close. Tough to call, but I'd say either both need to be limited legendary or both need to be limited epic. Probably both limited legendary, but I don't know. It's strange that REM sleep got gypped there. All right, moving on. This is a card that I hardly ever see people play, and I think this card's good. Archea. When played, if played in the left or right slot, your science cards in hand gain plus 18 this turn and next turn. So this is obviously a science card. So it's similar to a Leonardo da Vinci. You have to have a lot of science cards in your deck. Make this card work. But a lot of times, if you're making a science deck, like a mecha deck, you already have a fistful of science, so that stipulation isn't that big of a deal, I feel like, because this is geared for a science deck, right? So what am I comparing this to? So this is left or right slot. You're going to get 18. So basically, 6 cards potentially could get that 18, which is quite a bit of power for only 4 energy too. So I'm going to compare this card to another limited legendary that is Casa de Gileta. And this card says, it's a 3 energy cost card. It says, when played, if you're losing the round, your cards, wherever they are, gain plus 12 for 2 turns. So it's deceiving because it says your cards, wherever they are, makes it seem like you're going to get a lot more power. But because you're only getting it for 2 turns, it's still just 6 cards, right? So 6 cards getting 12 power, but you have to be losing the round when you play this. So there's an added downside now of I have to be behind, so is this card even helping at that point? So that's the problem with this card. Like I said, Archea or Archea or however you say it, does have the downside of needing to be geared towards science, but you're also getting 18 power where this is giving you 12 for 2 turns. So definitely weaker. So I don't know. I don't know why it's limited legendary. All right. Next up, we've got... So we just got 2 more comparisons, guys. We are at Siege of Baghdad. Siege of Baghdad, 6 energy, 50 base power. That's a little bit under where I want it to be, a little bit under the threshold. But when drawing your opponent's legendary cards, wherever they are, lose 25 for 3 turns. So, wow. That's a lot of power because most people play fistfuls of legendary cards. You guys know it. We've all seen it. Legendary cards up the wazoo. So chances are this is hitting something most of the time, if not multiple cards in their hands. So, and it's for 3 turns. So you could potentially affect 9 of their cards at 25 power. It's quite a lot when you think of it like that. 9 cards at minus 25 power. How much is that? That's 225 offhand. Is that right? 225? So 225 power. So really, potentially, you're getting 275 for 6. It's pretty strong if it's a full hit. Obviously, it's probably not going to be a full hit most of the time, but still, that is pretty decent, I feel like, for what you get, especially for a debuff card. If you guys love the debuff decks like I do, I think it's a decent card. Let's compare it now to a little snake that we all know and love. Bothrops Aatrox, 4 energy, 26 power, again, under where I want it to be. When drawn, 3 opponents' random cards in hand lose 30 for 3 turns. So, again, we have the 3 turns. Before we had 25 for 3 turns, but it affected all legendary cards for 3 turns. This is specifically only 3 cards in their hand. So, boom, we hit 3 cards in their hand. They're holding them for 3 turns, or they're having to play them with 30 power less. So, what are the chances that our Siege of Baghdad hits more than just those 3 cards? I think pretty high. So, which is better? This card does have the ability, though, that if it's round 1, your cards in hand cost 1 less this turn, which it happens occasionally, but it's not like a super impactful discount that's like breaking the bank or anything. So potentially that gives it a little bit extra, but not much. So I don't know. I kind of like the Siege of Baghdad better here. It costs a little bit more is the downside. You do get a little bit more power for it, though. But I think it's hitting more most of the time. This is going to be minus 90 power, where Baghdad could be potentially a lot more. So, I don't know. I think it's definitely a toss-up on that one. Let me know what you guys think. All right, final comparison. I've got it's a card I just actually played with, and I just like it. I know I mentioned potentially swapping it out on my last video for Clouded Leopard, but I still think this card's pretty good. Green Bottle, Blue Tarantula for a limited epic. Now, it does require you to have 8 or more ocean cards, and it requires you to have life on land cards. So there is a split there that... One problem, though, right now, I think, is oceans and life on land are not as strong as they probably could be, or at least not as strong as some of the other albums. We see arts and culture, science, and history, to me, probably are the strongest 3. Maybe, yeah, that's probably my idea. That's probably what I would say. I'd probably say arts and culture, science, history would probably be my top 3. You guys can let me know what you think about that. I'm not sure if it's 100% accurate, but in my opinion, I'd say those are probably the strongest 3. So this card does require you to have some less, I'd say, not as desirable albums. But I think the upside's pretty good with this card. If your deck has 8 or more ocean cards, they all, wherever they are, gain plus 15 this round, and your life on land cards would do the same. So if you at least have an 8-8 split, you're going to get, potential 9 cards for plus 15. And it's when played, too, which is nice. So it's not a return effect, so it is all 3 rounds going to trigger. So let's do the comparison for a limited legendary. We are going to do Rattlesnake. So Rattlesnake, 7 energy, 55 power. It's not where I want it to be. When returned, if you lost the turn, your cards, wherever they are, gain 18 this round. So it's a return effect, number 1. So it's not going to trigger that first round. So really, this is only good for 2 rounds at a max. So potentially, I have to lose the turn. So it's got that added downside now. Not only do I have to lose the turn, it's a return effect as well that now I potentially get 2 turns to play it, and I'm getting the plus 18 this round. What sounds better, guys? Granted, I don't need to have just life on land and oceans cards in my deck. That is the upside. But I think the downside's pretty bad. Number 1, it's a return effect, so I'm not getting the full 3 rounds with it. Whereas Tarantula gets me 3 rounds with the 18. This only gets me 2, and I have to be losing the turn. So, I don't know. I think I'd take Green Bottle over Rattlesnake any day, but that's just me. All right, guys, I think that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think of this kind of content. I can do more of these kind of videos if you guys like this stuff. Basically start picking out more and more epics. I could do rares comparing to epics, or, rares compared to legendaries. I don't know, whatever you guys want to do. So I can show you some cool cards that I think are better than others. If you guys just like seeing cool lists like this of some of the cards I prefer and cards I like to play with, just let me know. Like I said, any feedback is welcome. And as always, guys, appreciate you watching the video. Have a good night.